In far north Queensland, there is a small town celebrating a big history. Alarish was established in 1920 as a World War I discharged soldiers' settlement. The soldiers named their new home in commemoration of the taking of Alarish during the war. At the time, Alarish was part of Palestine. Today, it is a city of Egypt. During World War I, Egypt's Alarish was a critical supply base for Australian soldiers, saving many lives. Australia's Alarish flourished throughout the 20th century as the soldiers embarked on building a prolific sugarcane industry. "100 years later, in 2020, Alarish remains committed to preserving the significance of its rich history. To celebrate its centenary on 1st of August 2020, Alarish unveiled a new cenotaph featuring a rising sun forged by its local blacksmith. Experience the fascinating history of Alarish by visiting the Alarish Diggers Museum.
Fellow councillors, staff and residents viewing via live stream, good morning all and welcome. I acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of the land on which this meeting is being held and pay my respect to the elders, past, present and emerging. Would you please be upstanding for the delivery of the opening prayer, and Pastor Rob McGarry from the Tully Family Church will deliver this prayer.
Rob. Thanks, Mark. I've been told to sit down because I think it's closer to the microphone, but I'd like to read from Psalm 91 and just verse 1. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. David, King of Israel, wrote these words. It suggests that as we seek out the presence of God and draw close to him, not in a religious way, but personally, there comes an overshadowing presence of God into our life. A very real and assuring influence and presence. I love the phrase, abide under the shadow of the Almighty. This was evidenced in Daniel. He was a Hebrew who was a refugee in Babylon. He sought God's presence continually. The wisdom and understanding he brought in everyday life caused the ruler of his day to seek him out. The testimony about him was that he was of an excellent spirit. There was something about him that reflected God in himself. Each of us dwells somewhere in our lives. The things we love, draw upon and ponder in our own personal time is where we dwell. This influences who we are and what we bring to others. My prayer today is that you would come to the place where you bring an excellent spirit, wisdom, understanding, sound judgment, critical thinking, insight, good counsel, collaboration, and goodwill. It all depends on what you're dwelling on. Can we pray? Lord, we just thank you for this opportunity to gather today. And Lord, I thank you for each of these counsellors. Lord, the effort they put in, Lord, what they bring to this whole community. And we pray today, Lord, that be a blessing upon this meeting, that there would be all those characteristics of what Daniel brought, of an excellent spirit. And Lord, we just pray that you would guide each councillor and Lord, you would bring some good decisions today to this whole community. And we just thank you for the effort of each one in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks,
you,
mate.
Bob.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you. Councillors, I'm going to suspend standing orders and bring item 1 forward. Mr. Gott, could you please invite Mr. Heath in, please? Heath, how are you? Over to you, Ben.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On the 28th of April 2020, I received a notice from the Councillor Conduct Tribunal found that I had engaged in misconduct as defined by the Local Government Act 2009 by failing to register an interest in Innisfail Seafood earlier than I did. I believe that I have always been open and transparent about my involvement with Innisfail Seafood and did not believe I needed to register an interest until I become the owner of Innisfail Seafood, after which I did register an interest. The Tribunal did not agree with this view of the legal requirements. I acknowledge the misconduct as found by the Tribunal.
Thank you, Mr. Heath.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. We'll return to the standing orders. Are there any apologies? I'll take that as a no. We'll move on to declaration of conflict of interest. Material personal interest, conflicts of interest, including perceptions of conflict of interest. Please use this opportunity to make public any material personal interest and or conflict of interest, real or perceived, in respect of the items in the agenda. Councillors should use this opportunity to disclose and or comment on other councillors and or staff interests in accordance with the Act and regulations. Councillors, are there any declarations? I'll take that as a no. We'll move on to item 2, the confirmation of the minutes. Would somebody move that the minutes of the meeting on the 13th of August 2020 were a true and accurate record, please? Moved by Councillor Farinelli, seconded by Councillor Pervin. All in favour? It's carried. Any business arising from the previous minutes? I have a question for Mr. Gott in relation to the Cardwell sewerage recommendation that was adopted by Council. Could you give us an update, Mr. Gott, in relation to any negotiations that have taken place since the Council unanimously adopted that resolution from 2 weeks ago, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The negotiations between Council and the Department of State Development remain commercial in confidence at this stage. However, I can advise that Council officers have met with officers from the Department on several occasions this week, and we have another meeting scheduled for tomorrow. I should be in a position to provide much better and further information after the Department and Council staff work through the next couple of stages. So I'd anticipate that we'll have something fairly concrete quite soon, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Mr. Gott. Any further business arising? Councillor Millwood.
I'm just wanted to ask. I did go through the minutes and noticed that there wasn't a recording of the challenge, my challenge from the mayor, for a donation for the prize money for the throwing of the gumboot at the opening of the official opening at the Tully Grandstand. So if you could make a note of that, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for picking up that one, Councillor Millwood. And that the
So,
challenge
yeah,
is still live.
It's still live.
The challenge is still live.
Yeah. So I've got a new challenge. So as to that challenge, I've now picked up $650 that I've paid for the trophies. So I now challenge yourself and Deputy Mayor Barnes to match that for the prize money.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I'm up for it. Councillor Barnes, are you up for it? Okay, deal done. Any further business arising? I'll take there's no further business arising. We move on to item 4, asset sustainability, and Mr. Singh will deliver the report on disposal of assets, residential land in Tully. Welcome, Mr. Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, all. Councillors, I am obviously presenting this report on behalf of Daniel Bradford, who obviously is away today and over the next couple of days. So, councillors, as part of the budget deliberation, obviously, we did talk about disposal of council assets, and in the last couple of years, we have been trying to dispose of a couple of land parcels in Tully that council had subdivided going back to 2013. And in the past couple of years, we have tried disposing this particular parcel of land through a number of different real estate agents, and obviously we've had very limited success with this. And what council is hoping to do going forward is go out for tender as part of our asset disposal policy, and also as part of the regulations. We're hoping to go out for tender and tender the all 18 parcels of land, and as part of that process, we will engage a independent valuer who will provide us some market prices for those parcels of land, which would be used to set up a reserve through the CEO's office. And councillors, the intent here obviously is with the COVID-19 stimuluses that are around, there's a likelihood people with a lot of initiatives and development incentives that are around provided by the state and the feds, there's a likelihood some people may get excited and potentially may put a tender for some of these land parcels. Going forward, from a cost point of view, councillors, the whole exercise of going out for tender and trying to dispose it off ourselves is not anticipated to cost council a lot of money, and if we do end up selling any, the likelihood would be that someone else will move in and obviously start paying rates, and council doesn't have to pay rates on their own land. So councillors, with that, we have the recommendation this morning that council invite written tenders for the individual lots as per Schedule 1 and also authorize the CEO to set the reserve price, and also in accordance to the Local Government Act 2012, Local Government Regulation 2012, Section 228, that the CEO accept tenders in accordance to the Act and the regulations, and also we will provide a progress report to follow through. Happy to take questions, councillors.
Councillor Farinelli.
It's more just a comment, really. To have 18 vacant blocks there that have been pretty much doing nothing for many years now, and we're not collecting rates from them. I think it was something we jumped on pretty quickly, especially as a result of COVID and the fact that there's funding out there now for people to build homes. This is a great, hopefully, will be a great economic boost. If we could at least get a few of those vacant lots being built on by young people, they become rate payers. They build homes, and that's great for the building industry, great for everything that goes along with the building industry. So would be great for some of our locals or visiting locals to see that as an opportunity to choose to build in the area. And I think this will be a great outcome to finally, hopefully, see some of these blocks picked up.
Thank you, Councillor Farinelli. Councillor Barnes.
Kabinda, will there be building covenants over this? Because we'll have to structure all that before we put the tenders out.
Just through the Mayor, my understanding is that there would be no covenants. It is just a simple parcel of land without any covenants.
You're not frightened you're going to end up with 2 dongers and a sheet of iron? Because I've seen that happen. Unless you build some standard, you could end up with not the desired effect.
Just through the Mayor, if council has the intention of doing something similar, obviously we'll have to go back to the planning team, and I think historically the intent has been always to just sell it as a simple piece of land with building conditions attached to them as part of a normal residential dwelling. And if there is a need for a covenant, obviously that is something that council will have to explore. But again, we have always gone out and tried disposing those land parcels, and I have Dan here who's happy to provide some further clarification.
Thank you. Through the chair, Councillor Barnes. In the current planning scheme that we have structured, there's a policy within that planning scheme under the Dwelling House Code, which talks about the design and structure. So simply with 2 dongers and a sheet of iron, yeah, that might be fine in the back rural areas, but within the residential component of the township zone, those types of requirements are there. So they're for everyone, from building certifiers to adhere to our own certifier to make sure, and the planning team to make sure that it's done appropriately.
Any further questions for Mr Singh? Moved by Councillor Farinelli, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Singh. We move on to 5, Community and Culture, naming of the new grandstand. And Mr Goodman is going to present this report. Mr Goodman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors. Councillors, this report is to provide you with an opportunity to name the new grandstand at the Tully Showgrounds. The construction of the Tully multi-use sporting complex and grandstand is complete. I should put a little asterisk behind that. It's practically complete, with the anticipated official opening in September 2020. Given the significant community interest in naming the new grandstand, and as per the Council resolution of 10 October 2019, following community engagement was undertaken. Online public submissions were called via Council's website on 20 November 2019, which coincided with the media release calling for naming suggestions, which also contained information on how to access a hard copy of the naming suggestions form for those people who didn't have access to a computer. Submissions closed on 12 December 2019. A grandstand naming committee comprising Mayor Mark Nolan, Deputy Mayor Barry Barnes, Division 2 Councillor Teresa Millwood and myself met on 2 July 2020 to assess and shortlist the nominations. The following naming options were decided on: Tully Grandstand, Tully and District Community Grandstand, and the Banyan Grandstand. Council issued a media release on 21 July 2020 informing the community of the outcome of the committee's deliberations. The media release contained an invitation to residents to nominate their preferred name from the three options provided through an online survey. The online survey was created to give the community the opportunity to provide their input prior to the final proposal being considered by Council today. The survey closed on 5 August 2020. Of the three names put forward, 48% of the respondents indicated that the Tully Grandstand was their preferred option. Councillors, it's not in the report, but for your information, there was around 32% of the respondents nominated the Banyan Grandstand as their preference, and the remaining 20 the Tully and District Community Grandstand. There were another number of responses advising that they preferred none of these options, and there were a number of those options responses indicating that the preference to name it the Percy Peace Grandstand. Attached on the page 44, I think it was, of the agenda, is the copy of the artwork of the plaque, which has already been installed on the grandstand, which provides some history on Percy Peace himself and the old Percy Peace grandstand. So we have attempted to try and cover that issue as well. Council, we have not provided a recommendation for you today. The recommendation is for Council's decision on the name.
Thank you, Mr Goodman. Any questions for Mr Goodman? Councillor Millwood?
Through the chair, I haven't got a question. I'd just like to say that I went to the facility on Saturday to attend the first football match, and I just would like to say a big thank you to Anthony Emmy and all the people that helped him to achieve the funding required to build such an outstanding grandstand facility at our showgrounds. It's an absolute credit to all the parties involved, and it makes me very proud to be somebody who grew up in this township and to see them reach this achievement. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Millwood. Any further comments? Councillor Barnes?
Yeah, further on from what Councillor Millwood said, there were plenty of elderly people and younger people with a lump in their throat, I think, to see the work they used to put into that old grandstand, sweeping and mopping, because they couldn't wash it. It'd all go through the ceiling and damage the food in the canteen and many years, and that one was there for 90 years. I think this one will be there for 150, so there were plenty of people with a lump in their throat, I think. It was a great night, and officers, they know who they are, council officers who were there at 7 in the morning on a mop and a hose, and I think, you know, that's not a job description for them. They just did it off their own back, and I'd like to thank them very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Councillor Millwood?
Through the chair, if I may, I'd like to move the recommendation that it be called the Tully Grandstand after the results of the survey.
So it's moved by Councillor Millwood, seconded by Councillor Barnes, that the council decision is that we name it the Tully Grandstand. Can I just make one further comment before we put it to the vote? I'd like to publicly acknowledge, you didn't name them, but I will, Mr Goodman, Mr Fisher, Mr Horton and Mr McBride for their efforts on the day and on the night. And can I say, Mr Fisher makes a pretty mean hamburger, so he even went to the culinary skills on the night. So I'd like that recorded in the minutes, please. Been moved and seconded that it be called the Tully Grandstand. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr Goodman. Thank you. Good point, mate. We move on to item 6.1. an MCU for the ice making facility, and Mr. Horton will present this. Mr. Jones will present this report. Welcome, Mr. Jones.
Good morning, everybody. Through the Chair, Council is in receipt of an application for another change to existing approval, being a material change of use for a low impact industry ice making for land described as Lot 1 RP 729452, situated at 2 the Esplanade, the Coconuts. In March 2002, Johnstone Shire Council issued a development approval with conditions for a light industry ice making use and a caretaker's residence on the site. In recent times, Council received complaints from surrounding property owners regarding the noise generated by the use and the hours of operation, which did not comply with the conditions of the approval, which was issued back in 2002. Following discussions with the landowner and operator, it was confirmed that the use had intensified compared to what was originally approved in regards to the tonnage produced and the gross floor area, and was operating outside the development conditions. As such, an application for another change was required. Council, another change application relating to an existing development approval is required when the change is not considered a minor change. In this instance, the change cannot be considered a minor change because the land use, being light industry, was now known as low impact industry under the current planning scheme, requires impact assessment. This level of assessment is increased from code assessment under the former Johnstone Shire Council planning scheme, under which the original application was assessed and approved. The other change application is required to be assessed in the context of the original development to avoid having the change considered in isolation, and this also negates the requirement to assess the entirety of the development. Another change application is assessed in accordance with Section 82 of the Planning Act and the Development Assessment Rules. The proposed development and the application in front of you today facilitates the intensification of the existing use of the site as an ice making facility and a change to the development conditions. So Council, this application is not about whether or not the ice facility should be improved. It's purely about the intensification of the use on the site around the amount of tonnage produced and also the hours of operation. This includes an increase in the gross floor area of the development and an amendment to the conditions to allow the unloading and loading and transportation of ice to occur between 6 AM to 7 PM, 7 days a week. The application is impact accessible and therefore public notification was required. 9 properly made submissions were received by Council. 4 submissions and 1 petition with 21 signatures were received in support of the development, and 3 submissions and 1 petition with 17 signatures objected to the development. The matters raised in the submissions are addressed in the assessment report in front of you. The purpose of the proposal is to facilitate the growth of a local family-owned business, which is relied on by many other local businesses in the region. The business supports the region's recreational and commercial fishing industries, which are an important component of the region's economic base. The implementation of the noise attenuation measures outlined in the acoustic consultant's report will reduce noise to a level that is acceptable and in compliance with the Environmental Protection Act, Environmental Protection Regulation and the Environmental Protection Policy. The report outlines that noise emissions will not exceed the background noise levels by more than 3 decibels, making it largely inaudible for surrounding properties. To ensure compliance, it has been conditioned that further testing is undertaken subsequent to the installation of noise mitigation measures within 30 days, to confirm that the noise levels comply with those outlined in the legislation. It is also conditioned that loading and unloading of trucks occurs within the shed and with the doors closed. It is considered that the proposed hours of operation and the expansion of the business are reasonable, given the designation of the site as an industry precinct and located adjacent to the slipway. The application is generally consistent with the provisions of the Cassowary Coast Regional Council Planning Scheme 2015, and therefore the application for another change to an existing approval, being material change of use for a low impact industry iceworks, is recommended for approval, subject to reasonable and relevant conditions. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the officer, councillors? If not, would somebody move the recommendation, please? Moved by Councillor Chewy, seconded by Councillor Baines. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to item 6.2, an MCU for a cabinet making business, and Mr. Horton will present this report.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Morning, Council.
Morning.
Council, page 90 of our agenda. Pretty pleased. We have a development application for material change use for a medium impact industry, cabinet making, and a minor boundary realignment for 2 lots into 2 lots on land described as Lot 34 on SP 121579 and Lot 36 on SP 190-624, situated at 20 Flynn Road. This application came about, Council, from a bit of unlawful use being carried out on the property. It was originally, the business was located on Marillion Harper Road. It's moved around to Flynn Road, so it's the same family that's been operating it for numerous years, however they're consolidating onto their own property. So, Council, the application was impact accessible because it is in the rural zone with the impacts to good quality agricultural land, separation distances for noise, dust, those types of components are also considered in here. It didn't trigger any application to referral agency of SARA, as it's not in close location to the intersection to Marillion Harbour Road, which is State Control Road, Council. As it was impact, we had public notification, Council. We got 0 submissions on that. And from there, Council, the nearest house outside of their own house that they live in is 115 metres away. The rest of the business, as we can see on page 97, Council, is surrounded by sugarcane. The boundary realignment has been conditioned to ensure that we've got a 3 metre separation distance around the shed and the rear of the dwelling, the pool and the back outbuildings there as well, to ensure that we meet fire standards in that process. Council, it's recommended for approval. It's conditioned reasonably and relevantly. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the officer, councillors? Moved by Councillor Farinelli, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Horton. Move on to item 7, Governance, Environment and Finance. 7.1, the Finance Report. And Ms Bradley will present this report. Morning, Ms Bradley.
Good morning, councillors. Good morning. So this morning we have in front of you the financial report for the period ending 31st of July 2020. The 1920 financial results are still being finalised and then will be audited before we can release council's position for the 30th June 20 financial year. So on the 7th of July, council adopted the 2021 budget, which is reflected in these reports in front of you. So council tracks the year-to-date revenue and expenditure across departments, programs and services, and also includes crucial financial statistical data which highlights council's operations. So the finance team's continuously looking for innovation and improved analytics, as well as enhanced information sharing as we progress through the year. So as a result of that, we have compiled a new financial report for the coming financial year, which will continue to develop over the coming months as we improve it and tweak it and make it easier to present and process for the finance team. So it provides meaningful financial information and statistical information as well, same as previously, but ensures transparency across council's operations. So some of the key highlights from the report include end of month cash balance sitting at 31.22 million, operational revenue sitting at 1.63 million, which is 148,000 over budget. Operational expenditure sitting at 8.76 million, which is 990 million under budget. Capital expenditure for the month totaled 1.35 million, and year-to-date capital expenditure, including commitments, totals 13 million. The second page of the report gives you a high-level summary of council's position at the end of July. And you can see in here there's also notes against the various variances that require commentary. So the first one relates to net rates and utilities. So year to date we're sitting at 106,000 negative against a negative budget of 22,000, so $84,000 variance. So council has issued its rates notices, as you're all aware, with the bulk of the revenue anticipated to be received in August, September, in line with the due dates.
Councillor Farinelli.
I think there may just be a little typo in that operational expenditure should be 990,000 and not 990 million.
Apologies.
Yeah, just
Apologies.
Councillor Purban and I kind of looking at each other going,
Sorry about that.
So
yes,
just a little correction.
990,000.
My apologies.
No, thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Farrelly.
So the rates notice has been issued with the revenue expected to come in August and September based on the extended due dates that we've provided ratepayers. So the figures associated with Note 1 reflect the discount provided on prepaid rates, which is why it's sitting in a negative. So once the revenue's received, that will clear out. Fees and charges are sitting at 340,000 received versus a budget of 225,000, so 114,000 ahead of budget year to date. So this mainly relates to the relaxation of COVID restrictions, which has resulted in increased revenue for caravan parks and campgrounds across the region, which we'll go into in a bit more detail as we go through the report. Operating grants currently sitting at 132,000 with a budget of 60,000, so 71,000 ahead of budget. So non-budgeted partial funds have been received for the Innisfail Bowls Club project, and this will be updated during the next budget review. The next item to note is other revenue sources, currently sitting at 198,000 with a budget of 123,000, so 74,000 ahead of budget. So this relates to unbudgeted legal fees that have been reimbursed through insurance claims, totalling 40,000. Materials and services currently sitting at 3.03 million versus a budget of 4.2 million, so 1.2 million behind budget. So this mainly relates to curbside collection and transfer station and utility charges and invoices that haven't yet been received when this report was run. So these invoices are anticipated to be processed in August once they're received by Council. So Council staff are currently working on finalising the financial statements, as I mentioned, for last financial year, and this may impact some of these figures in here depending on the journals that need to be processed. So I'll take you through the report this month, just to give you some details on the structure of it and what's in it. So the first page gives a very high-level summary of the financial result for the year, year to date, with an operating result sitting at minus 7.1 million versus a year-to-date budget of minus 8.2 million, and then a net result sitting at minus 7.06 million versus a year-to-date budget of minus 8.4 million. The graph underneath that displays that information in a more graphical format for you. Underneath that, we have our measures of financial sustainability. So our operating surplus ratio currently sitting at minus 436% due to the timing of our rates revenue when that's received. Asset sustainability ratio sitting at 45%, and net financial liabilities ratio sitting at minus 500%, also due to timing of transactions. The next page gives some details on Council's operating revenue. So it breaks down the various categories of revenue underneath that, as you can see there. And then a graph also explaining where we are year to date versus budget. So one thing to note in the graph is that the red line is actually our year to date budget and the black line is our year to date actual. So that will be fixed up for the next report. Underneath that, we have our quarterly rates arrears. So for the quarter ending June, we had 10.9% outstanding, which totalled 8.16 million, which is a decrease on 17% from last quarter. Next page is similar, but on our operating expenditure, breaking down what makes up that. We've got total operating expenditure sitting at 8.7 million versus a year-to-date budget of 9.7 million, so 990,000 under budget. Graph underneath that also reflects that information. Following page is our interim balance sheet as at 31st of July. We can see our closing balance in the second column at the end of the month, with total assets totaling 1.2 billion, liability sitting at 25.9 million, giving us community equity sitting at 1.19 billion. Underneath that is our aged debtors, so 86% for the month of July are sitting in 0 to 30 days, and 13% are sitting in the 90 plus days. The following page is our cash flow. So we've got our cash from operating activities, investing and financing activities. with the movement column being the first one there. We've got our beginning cash balance at 37.35 million, net cash outflows for the month of July totaling 6.1 million, giving us a closing balance of the 31.2 million mentioned earlier. Our investment performance is the graph underneath that. In light of current interest rates and things provided across the economy, we thought it was appropriate to include this graph in here so we can monitor how we are tracking with our investments against the RBA cash rate as well as the QTC cash rate. So as it's only 1 month, there's 3 dots on that page, and obviously that line graph will grow as the months progress. So we're total at the moment have a weighted average interest rate at 1.01%, with QTC cash rate sitting at 0.73% and the RBA cash rate at 0.25%. So we are receiving higher investments than what we're currently getting out of QTC. The following page details our capital works program for the year. We have our capital budget in the first column, broken down by departments and then programs, with our total budget of 36.5659 million approved by council. Second column is the estimate of capital works carryover, which will be finalised in our September budget review once that gets brought to council, giving us a total estimated capital budget of 56.53. So the month of July, as mentioned, the 1.34 million has been spent, with commitments sitting at 11.6 million and capital actual year to date including commitments totaling 12.9 million, which represents almost 23% of the capital budget. The next page is our capital works in progress. So for the month of July, we're sitting at 23.6 million in the graph there, which is broken down by departments based on those colours. Based on project status, you can see in the second graph there, we've got 10% sitting in physically complete, 75% sitting in construction phase and 14% in pre-construction phase. The next page is a program summary. So this details our revenue and expenditure down to program level based on department. As you can see, we've got our Chief Exec Department, Infrastructure, Water, Sewerage and Waste business units have been separated as well, broken down by their revenue based on those revenue sources and expenditure as well. The last page, as you're aware, Council's been working on our service catalogue, and as such, we will be reporting in our monthly report based on service type. Down the page there you can see each of the service types listed. Once again, same format as the second table with our revenue based on each of the revenue sources versus the budget, as well as expenditure year-to-date actual versus the budget. Happy to answer any questions. I realise that was a lot of information I passed out just then.
Thank you, Ms Bradley. Any questions for the officer, councillors? Councillor Chewy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through Ms Bradley, just a query. I had someone question me about they prepay their rates and the discount. They felt they weren't eligible for the discount on prepaid rates. I've spoken to Ms Vick about that and she assured me that was the case. I wondered perhaps if we could do a little media release to explain to people that they do certainly receive a discount on prepaid, because their thought process was they should put the money in the bank and earn interest on it and then pay their rates when they're due, so I just, if that could be arranged possibly, that would be good. Thank you.
Through the Chair, that's not a problem. We can definitely arrange something like that, and I can assure you that yes, prepaid rates do receive the discount.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chewy. Any further questions for Ms Bradley? Would somebody move that the report be received and noted, please? Councillor Farinelli, seconded by Councillor Barnes. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Baines, I should say, not Barnes.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Ms Bradley. We move on to item 7.2. The CEO's had to leave the room for a moment and Mr Singh will present this report.
Councillors, and good morning all again. Councillors, in front of us is our reviewed councillor portfolio. So just to highlight, in terms of where we are, obviously we have presented this report in our last council meeting, and from there forward we have had some discussions amongst the councillors and also councillors, the report itself provides a guideline on the operation of the councillor portfolio system. So obviously breaking it down into different aspects of the portfolios that each of the councillors would be driving. Just to summarise again, so councillors, in terms of major projects, Councillor Mayor Nolan has been assigned to that. Planning and Regional Development, Councillor Nicholas Bevan. Economic Development and Tourism, Councillor Kylie Ferranelli. Governance, Environment and Finance, Councillor Jeff Baines. Community and Cultural, Councillor Trudy Shui. Asset Sustainability, Councillor Barry Barnes. And Waste Management and Waste Management Innovation, Councillor Teresa Millwood. So councillors, we have noted in this report the organisational culture development will now be under Councillor Mr. Mayor Nolan's purview going forward, and also the minor changes between the previous portfolio being held by Councillor Teresa Millwood. So in terms of the recommendation itself, so councillors, the recommendation is in front of you. If there's any question, happy to take a question.
Any questions for Mr. Singh, councillors? Pretty straightforward. We had a good discussion about this. Councillor Baines, seconded by Councillor Chewy. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Singh. We now move on to general business. Any general business items, councillors? Councillor Chewy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a good news story. I popped into the South Mission Beachcomber Caravan Park. Win TV were doing their breakfast show weather cross there this morning, so I just thought I'd call in. There were quite a few locals for the 7:30 cross, which was great. Tim was very impressed that the children at the school don't have to wear shoes to school. He thought that was great. And then the 8 o'clock cross was long-term visitors, people that have been coming up from the south. One couple had been coming up for 1,000 years, and so we did a little chat to them. So it was great to see, and we congratulate Win TV and Beachcomber for creating that space. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chewy. Any further general business items? Councillor Pervin.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Goodman, would you be able to give me an update on the Mundu School footpath, where we're at, and the construction of the new footpath to Maya Avenue?
Mr. Goodman.
Mr. Mayor, through the chair, Councillor Pervin, the construction of the resolution that was adopted by council was that footpath be considered in future budgets. We anticipate that we will be able to accommodate that in a budget review. In a coming budget review in this financial year, so we have not as yet committed to a construction date for that footpath. However, the pre-planning's in place, and we expect, we are planning on the basis that council will reallocate funds through a future budget review, and that'll be constructed in this financial year.
Further, Mr. Goodman, while you're there, the River Drive Caravan Park, the removal of caravans and the sheds and the portable dongers, and the expected reopening date of the River Drive Caravan Park.
Through the chair, works significantly commencing in River Drive Caravan Park mid-September. We will, the auction for the assets to be disposed of is expected to be closing between 3 September and 8 September. All sold, it will be a condition of the auction that all sold assets to be removed by 6th of October. On top of that, most of the works, capital works, there will be undertaken by day labour, by a council workforce, including camp kitchen upgrade, removal of existing assets where they need to be repaired a demolition of a small part of the existing caretakers' residence and landscaping and tree removal. We haven't yet set a date as in terms of opening of the caravan park once that work's complete, and we will have to work with a plan to procure a caretaker for that. But currently expecting those works to be finished around November, December.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goodman. That's it from me. Thanks.
2020, I should have said.
Councillor Millwood.
So through the chair, Dave, while you're there, I just wanted to know what the where we're at with Great Greenway Caravan Park.
Councillors, the facilities team have been working on a plan right across caravan parks, and we will be looking to sit down with all of council and go through what we are proposing as a way forward at Greenway and a couple of others in the very near future.
Councillor Barnes.
Mr. Goodman, you're still on track to be finalising at the council meeting on the 10th of September in regards to 1 mile dredging?
Through the chair, at that meeting we anticipate that we will be able to, we'll be bringing a report to recommend the shortlisting of the expressions of interest, and that we move forward with some selected companies that have nominated through the expression of interest to provide further detail so that we can complete the business case, among other things, and apply for the $1.5 million of funding through the federal government.
Any further questions, councillors? General business? Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, one more, and while you're in the chair, Mr. Goodman, I've been approached by a member of the community. Yeah, we're on to you today. I have been approached by a member of the community about the Geraldton Bridge signage. Geraldton Bridge has been in place for, well, since the 60s, I believe. And the member of the public has asked that generally you pass over a significant waterway and it'll actually say what the waterway is. So there has been a request that we consider putting up a Johnston River sign. You know, it's one of the greatest rivers in the wet tropics area and centre of some of our townships. So I'd just put forward that possibly we could consider that in the future.
Yep. Mr. Goodman?
Yeah, happy to respond to that. And I'll take the liberty of committing to something that sits within the delivery services budget, but it's the small expenditure to improve the signage there, which is consistent with how large bridges are signed on the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. It is consistent to have the name of the bridge and the waterway as well. So we don't always do that, but it is not. It's certainly for our very significant waterways. That's not an unreasonable request at all, and I don't think that would be any problem at all to make sure that happens.
Any further general business items, councillors? Councillor Purban?
Yeah, just thanks. Mr. Jones, Byron, we'll be able to ask you to give us a bit of a rundown on the signage coming to and from the new signage that was supposed to be erected in the region.
Thank you, Councillor Purban. Through the chair, we have had some delays in this project in regards to COVID. However, we've made some pretty big steps behind the scenes. We've got all the Indigenous artwork finalised and the licence agreements, and those artists have been paid for their work. We've also got all the approvals from Department of Transport and Main Roads in place. So all up, there'll be 3 regional entry signs, one on the north of the north of Innisfail on the Bruce Highway, south of Cardwell on the Bruce Highway, and also to the west, and then each major town of Innisfail, Tully, Mission Beach and Carball will get 2 signs each, coming north and south from that direction. We are looking with Arm Sign is the person that's got the contract at the moment in regards to how it will be delivered in regards to COVID if this issue does hang around for much longer. Yes, but we are working behind the scenes to come up with a resolution as soon as possible.
Any further, Councillor Millwood?
Just wanted to say a big thank you to Gavin, Mr. Hammond. I was fortunate enough to be able to go and attend a 2-day Lawmac conference in Mackay last week, which was very informative, considering it was about waste, which is my portfolio. It was very informative and I learned a lot, and I'd just like to say thanks to Gavin for his leadership over those couple of days. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Millwood. That'll be noted in the minutes. Any further general business? Councillors, I just want to make a general statement in relation to the Eddy Bay issues, which we're all acutely aware of. Acting in the public interest is always paramount, and as leader of the Cassowary Coast Regional Council, I have made a commitment that the community sentiment and opinions will not be ignored by the Council. In keeping with the purpose of that commitment, I advise the councillors and community that I am aware of issues regarding the Eddy Bay facility that have been raised by the community members to the councillors, staff and to myself. I can assure the community that we have listened and have already responded by engaging directly with the successful tenderer for the Eddy Bay facility with a view to better understand community identified issues and perceptions, so as a result in the best interest of the region can be achieved. The successful tenderer has attended directly upon the councillors and staff, and I compliment him on his open, cooperative approach. It is far too early to predict what may come from the discussions currently occurring. However, I can assure the public that Council and the tenderer are working in good faith to produce an appropriate outcome which will be made known quite transparently when achieved. Any further general business items, councillors? Okay, then we'll ask somebody to move that we go into committee for the confidential item. Moved by Councillor Farinelli, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Do we have to open those doors?
Almost like a deja
Got
vu,
to open the
isn't
doors,
it?
mate.
I'll do a smaller version.
Yeah.
You're up again, mate. Oh, hang on. All good? Yep, you're right.
Good morning, Mr Mayor and councillors.
Morning, Mr Hammond.
Thank you. I have a report that identifies that our waste direction from 2021 and onwards be considered. We have a series of waste contracts that expire on the 31st of July next year, and I propose that we move from a contract situation to a day labour system. The report identifies the costings involved and how we can actually do it. It identifies the plant required, staffing required, governance issues, resource recovery issues, and a range of others. I recommend to Council that the report be considered and accepted with the recommendation that we commence a day labour system from the 1st of August 2021 for the management of all landfills, for the management of all transfer stations, for the management of waste transfer from Tully and Stodders Hill transfer stations to an external waste facility, the management of weighbridges at Tully and Stodders Hill transfer station, and the management of all miscellaneous and interlocking aspects of waste management in the Cassowary Coast region.
Thank you, Mr Hammond. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Millwood.
Through the chair, I just want to let everybody know that I'm fully supportive of the council's appetite to change the way we do waste. However, I believe the main objective to do this is to find savings to pass on to our ratepayers, and I will ensure that this is our main objective over the period. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Millwood. Councillor Farinelli.
Just agreeing with Councillor Millwood, Mr Mayor and Mr Hammond. You know, the reason why we have decided to go down this path is to find savings for the ratepayer. So I'll also be making sure that that's something we try to reflect moving forward. And the other thing that has been on my mind as well is making sure that we don't let this impact local jobs. So where possible, considering locals first would be something I would love to see we continue to do as a region and as a council. But great to see us moving in this direction. I think there is so much innovation happening around waste, and for us to be able to benefit and pass those benefits on to the ratepayers, innovations that are coming out. I know you're all over that. I know Councillor Millwood is also all over that. Hey, who's to say we can't make a lot of money out of rubbish moving forward? Be great.
Thank you, Councillor Farinelli. Any further comments, councillors? I'd just like to summarise by saying that in this term we won't make a more strategic decision than how we manage our waste. Millions of dollars are allocated every budget into the waste budget, as Mr Hammond manages so well, and I believe history will show that this will be our biggest decision as 7 councillors in terms of a strategy to change what we've been doing in the past and to do something better in the future. If there are any further comments, Councillor Millwood. Move the motion, seconded by Councillor Baines. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. That brings the meeting to a close, councillors, staff, and we have a short break until Frank and Diane Sharker present at 10:30 for a special presentation, which will be live streamed. Michael, how are we going to handle that, mate? All good? Councillors and staff, we now reconvene for a very special recognition. Today, we recognise Frank and Diane Sharker for their significant contribution to sustainable environment management and to our region. Over the past 17 years, Frank and Diane of Pacific Coast Eco Bananas have been leaders in their field. The duo have been ahead of their time with their work to protect land and reef-based assets and have demonstrated industry leadership in protecting natural assets on-farm and off-farm, such as the Great Barrier Reef, for vision, strategy and capacity to address dynamic change in the eco-organic farming protocol, in the commitment to sustainable farming and sustainable marketing alongside creating an eco-organic category for bananas with a clearly identified brand, and their initiative to develop an agri-tourism centre to build on their existing philanthropic education services. They created the eco-organic system following years of observing the degradation and decline of the reef and soil health. A passionate nature lover and frequent diver on the reef during his early years, Frank observed the interaction between species and the surrounding environment. His growing knowledge and concern became a key driver to change farming practices and provided insight into how all ecosystems are interrelated and dependent on each other. Frank recognised by allowing naturally occurring plants in the farm environment to flower, seed and flourish in the interrows, he prevented runoff and provided a critical food source to bring back a balanced ecosystem above and below soil surface. He wanted to produce a banana that would mimic the way nature intended it to be grown. This meant finding a way to grow in balance in the soil's capacity to grow food naturally, not force feeding for bunch size or yield, but grown the way food would naturally develop in the wild. Frank wanted to create a vibrant ecosystem where all creatures, great and small, organisms, insects, reptiles, birds and other animals would help him grow his crop. He saw all these creatures as nature's workers or helpers in producing a tastier, healthier banana. This new farming system protects the environment. It encourages all creatures to flourish, contributes to the health of the soil, protects the waterways and produces a far superior banana. The Sharkers' work has been recognised in academic papers, speaking engagement, awards and media coverage throughout Australia. Their product, the Wax Tip Eco Bananas, are the only branded banana at point of sale in Australia and are available from nearly all Australian states and territories. Eco Bananas are also being exported to Asia, further demonstrating the market for farming which protects one of the world's most valued natural assets, our Great Barrier Reef. Pacific Coast Eco Bananas has received many endorsements and awards for their growing protocols, business practices and protection of the environment, including the Prince of Wales Environmental Leadership Reef Sustainability Award for their vision, leadership and creation of the eco-organic farming system. Thank you, Frank and Diane, for your hard work and dedication, and on behalf of our wider community, please accept our congratulations on your achievements. On behalf of the Council and councillors and staff, I'd like to present the small token of our appreciation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Now, I know Diane's the most fluent speaker, but it looks like Frank's taken the mantle today and no, delegating. Can you tell us a little bit about your product, please?
Well, maybe both of us, but
yeah.
Anyway, is that Diane?
I'd just like to say thank you to the Mayor and councillors for this recognition today. It is really important for us. And I'd also like to recognise our growers, because without them, we wouldn't have a business. Their loyalty to all of the hardships along the way and getting to where we are today has also made our business successful alongside their business. So the Poppy families in Mirrawinny, the Locke families at South Johnston and the Singh families at Cardwell, a huge thank you to you guys for standing beside us. And I'll let Frank talk a little bit about the product. Thank you.
Okay. Well, for me, it's been a passion of mine for a lot of years. I think we started back in 2020 along this journey actually started before that, but
2002. You said 20.
yeah. Oh, sorry, 2002. I honestly, along this journey, it's been a great journey, and it's opened up a lot of doors for me, and it's created a vision that I'd like to share with everybody. And what I can see is that, you know, our natural resources that we have are very, very important. They actually can add huge value to the community, to the people that live in that in this area. So, you know, what I can see is that the resources that we have and the health of those resources are going to be imperative. They're so important for our future in the community. So, if we look after it, we'll do well. If we abuse it, what I can see is that we will be struggling all the time. So, yeah, that's my take on it.
Thanks, Frank. Any comments, councillors, to Diane or Frank? Councillor Farinelli.
I've known Frank and Diane since I was a little girl, and I've known their girls since they were born, and they were actually flower girls at my wedding. So I've watched their journey forever, and just so proud of what you've achieved. And for me, ag tourism has a massive part to play moving forward. I see your product as something that really is special to our region, and I know moving forward, making sure, you know, we put your bananas in the hands of people right across the country, and then sell the story, your story, and then bringing them here to this region, and hopefully to your next chapter. If we can get that, if you get that ag tourism business up and running, there's so much potential, I think, also around education, and I know I've spoken to Diane about that, and just sharing your story and your passion for the eco-organic and the way you grow. You are an absolute inspiration to me, and I'm so proud to have known you for so many years and to have seen you achieve such amazing things. Very proud.
Thank you, Councillor Farinelli. Any further comments, Councillor Millwood?
Yes, I think this is very important because the way of the future is people want to go and see where their food comes from. So this is the bottom line of where we can start, and hopefully it brings prosperous times for you guys.
Any further comments, councillors? Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, huge congratulations to Diane and Frank. This has the absolute ability to become an iconic product within our region, and I'm very happy that you mention and acknowledge the other growers that are working with you. I know it's been a long journey. I've sat with Frank on the local Marine Advisory Committee group for the last 4 years, and there's still plenty of work to go, but these innovative methods and this wonderful marketing that you do can really help us put the Cassowary Coast on the map as the real jewel in the wet tropics region. So I just want to congratulate you both, and look forward to working with you more closely in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Baines. Councillor Diane.
Can I just make a comment on the Agri-Tourism Centre? It's something that's been on the table now for about 4 years. I have done a draft of like an exploratory. It's not a full feasibility study by any means, but it covers all the theory behind what drives ecotourism. Our first call to that centre really was, we've been offering a philanthropic service to a lot of schools interstate and now overseas universities from Canada and France that come every year. So it's filling a void for institutions that want to have a case study within the curriculum where they can follow through from not just what's happening on the land, but right through to the marketplace. They're identifying that students need to understand that supply chain flow and consumer behaviour as well. It's not just about saving the land. There's a whole closed circle there. And that is just organically grown. Every year we get another one or two that want to come, and we've provided that free of service. Part of the Agritourism Centre concept was that we could provide some sort of Zoom type situation for schools that didn't have the funding to actually visit us. Obviously coming touch and feel is far better, but we didn't want state schools within Australia to not have the opportunity to participate and have our business as a case study for their students. So that was one of the drivers for the Ag Centre, because it got to the stage where fitting 40 people in our office was getting to be a struggle, and we needed a bigger venue. And then, of course, my daughter, who sort of spent some time in tourism, said, Mum, we've got lots to offer the tourism sector as well. So it's multifaceted. We also want to do a bit of processing at some stage. So there's a lot that can happen there, and obviously that will contribute to the economics of the economy as well.
Can I just add something?
Yeah, Councillor Farinelli.
And I don't want to sort of jump ahead. We'll be talking about this in 2 weeks' time when our next tourism report comes to council, but had a few discussions with some key stakeholders in tourism and especially looking at agriculture moving forward. And I call it future farming, and ensuring a way for our next generation to have an interest in farming. And you've shown that, especially with Alana, with your daughter. The way we farmed in the past, the hopping on tractors and just going, is not capturing their interest moving forward. It's finding other areas of farming to capture their interest. They love all that, diversifying and social media and all those sorts of things. So, and your family, and especially with Alana, is prime example of how you can future-proof your farm by having that next generation play a part. And so that's something I'm talking with some different groups over, and I will use you guys as an example when the time comes, just how that works. Because for all of us as farmers, I'm one as well, any way we can find a way to keep our children involved and passionate about what we do is fantastic. You found a way to do that, and hats off to you as far as I'm concerned. If we can try to share that enthusiasm and show that to the wider farming community, to actually expose to them opportunities on their farms, and then that maybe will capture the interest of that next generation and their children, to me is a fantastic way forward.
Frank.
Just on that, we've been sending bananas over to Hong Kong since about 2009, and we never thought we would be able to get them, to sustain that market, because we'd be competing with the Philippine bananas at a lot cheaper price. But it's 2009, we're 2020, and we're still sending bananas over there, and we've expanded our market. When I asked the buyers over there what was the reason for buying our bananas and putting them in the shops, like Parkins shops, supermarkets, and they said, well, look, we can buy organic produce from South America far cheaper than your product. We can buy, those products. But he said, you've got a different message. He said, you've got eco-organic. He said, we can't buy eco-organic from anywhere else, and we can't buy the wax tip from anywhere else. So, and it's from Australia. So you ticked all the boxes for us, and that's why we want your product, right? So it's not, organics is fine. This is a new message. This is eco-organic. This is about, the future. It's about looking after all the ecosystems in the globe, to create a healthy earth and, of course, healthy people. So it's a different message. It's a message that coincides with, what everybody's trying to achieve in the world, and that's carbon reduction, the global warming. All these are all issues, brought about by the fact that we need to be better and more responsible people in looking after the world. So it's, what happens in Australia affects somebody. What happens in in Japan and so forth. So because we're all interconnected. So the message behind eco-organic is a new message. It's a different message, and it's a message, you know, that we've created here in our local area, in our community. And, you know, it's now, you know, we've got the interest of not just you know, here. This has got the interest from agriculture right across Australia. So all I can say is that the opportunities exist. You just got to do things differently and fit in with the new direction in which the world is going. So, you know, insects, birds, all our biologicals, all that biodiversity is very, very important, right? It's our natural capital, and it has a huge value because without it, we can't grow food. Right? And unfortunately, in agriculture, as in years gone by, it's been, you know, it's about production, it's about the crop you grow and how can we increase the production. That focus has always been around that. And slowly, we've degraded a lot of soils and a lot of ecosystems. And, you know, and it's at the detriment of our tourist industry and you know, other resources and other things that you know, live in the community. So I actually see that it's about the people who live in this community, and it's about them understanding the importance, right, of having a healthy river, of having fish stocks in there, having, you know, all those things. We need to put a lot of emphasis in everybody understanding why it's important to have healthy systems, because, you know, our tourist industry is going to, you know, support that, and you will actually see growth in that. So, and that links with, you know, the community is linked, and the people who live in the community are linked with the farmers. So I'm trying to bring that across. So it's not about the farmers sit within the farming group and the farmers organisation. It's about the people who live in that community, right, have a say as well, right, because they are impacted in it as well. So that's why we're here, is to share that and say, you know, you guys are the you know, the council, and you know, I'm trying to bring that passion, that emphasis to you guys to say, this is about the wider community. This is about the people who live here as well. So I want to be able to share that message with them.
Thank you, Frank. Councillor Millwood.
So in my opinion, I think we as a council, if we embrace the eco-organic branding and encourage others to get on board, we could promote this as part of the culture in our region of the Cassowary Coast, to get on board with you guys. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Millwood.
Well, we've had many awards. We've had a lot of recognition, you know, from the United Nations, as far as that, and, you know, awards given to us at Government House from the Governor-General. And, you know, these awards have been set up to prompt recognition, to prompt what we're doing to make it grow, to share it and say, well, this is the reason why. This is why it's so important that what they're doing, right, needs to be shared. Right? It just doesn't belong. It doesn't just sit within us. It's got to be shared in a wider so it can grab traction and move, and everybody can share in it as well.
Thank you, Frank. I think as a council, we're extremely proud that we've finally recognised you and your good wife in what you've achieved. Your wax tip banana has certainly put our region on the map. But I think the most important thing you're doing is about the next generation, the legacy we leave them. And your philanthropic education services, to me, is the message I pick up today. You've achieved so much, but you're not taking it with you. You're making sure the legacy that you leave is for the next generation. And in terms of our environment, there couldn't be a more positive message than that. So, Diane and Frank, on behalf of Council, thank you very much. Your presentation was very well received, and my apologies that it's been long overdue. but we're so pleased that we were able to do it today. Okay. All right. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Diane. Yeah, they're yours, mate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll leave these bananas here. That somebody can take, they can share.
Good on you. Good on you. Thanks, Frank.
Have they been ripened?
Yes, they have. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings our meeting to a close. Thank you.